Welcome to the deep dive. You, the listener, came to us with this brilliant and honestly slightly vexing puzzle that just runs counter to everything we think we know about success.
Right.
We have sources here exploring a really deep paradox. Why do so many incredibly smart people, high IQ professionals, people with PhDs, engineers, surgeons, why do they so often find themselves in this perpetual state of financial struggle?
Living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly, even when that paycheck is enormous.
It's the ultimate cognitive blind spot, isn't it?
Yeah.
We just assume that high cognitive horsepower automatically translates into, effective application in all areas of life, especially finance.
Of course.
But what our sources are really highlighting is that managing money is not a function of raw processing power. The real mission of this deep dive, I think, is to prove the core thesis. Money management is fundamentally psychological.
Exactly. Our goal today is to drill down into that main idea, which states pretty unequivocally that financial success is entirely behavioral. It's rooted in things like impulse control and temperament, not in, complex financial mathematics.
Yeah. If you're here expecting us to walk through the Black School's model, you are definitely in the wrong place.
Right. We are hunting for those crucial behavioral nuggets that unlock true financial freedom, and that's really regardless of your IQ score.
And we have to acknowledge that distinction between skill-based intelligence and, let's call it, applied behavioral intelligence. We're moving beyond the academic knowledge of how money works and into the neurological motivations of why we choose to spend or save.
Okay.
So we'll unpack four essential concepts today. The core behavioral flaw, the gravitational pull of the rat race, the vital difference between rich and wealthy, and the mastery required for delayed gratification.
Let's unpack this. Let's start right at the beginning with section 1, the core thesis, why smart people go broke.
We have to establish this foundational argument immediately because it's it's profoundly democratizing. Success with money has almost nothing to do with how smart you are.
Okay.
If you can just grasp that one thing,
Yeah.
it frees you from that intellectual pressure that says, I should be good at this because I'm smart.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It forces you to confront the real enemy, which is it's internal.
I really appreciate that phrasing, internal enemy. But let me play the role of the skeptical high achiever here for a second.
Go for it.
Doesn't advanced asset allocation or, complex state planning, optimizing tax structures, doesn't that still require some pretty sophisticated intelligence? Are we oversimplifying the math component a bit too much?
That's a necessary challenge, and the sources would argue that, yes, those sophisticated skills are necessary for optimization once you have capital.
Okay.
But they are completely irrelevant if you never acquire the capital in the first place. Think of it this way. Complex financial instruments are like the 400-level course. But just saving money consistently, that's the prerequisite. That's the 101 level habit. You can have a PhD in engineering, be capable of designing a multi-billion-dollar satellite. But if you lack the fundamental impulse control to not buy the biggest house or the fastest car the moment your paycheck hits,
Then the high income just becomes a problem.
it just accelerates the time it takes you to accumulate high debt. You can still hypothetically go broke with a $500,000 salary if your behavioral flaws align with your spending capacity.
That is the crucial pivot. Understanding the theory of finance is academic, it's intelligence-based.
Yeah.
But practicing sound money habits, the discipline, the consistency, the ability to just walk away from a tempting purchase, the resilience to endure frankly, the boredom of saving.
That is entirely psychological.
It's a constant battle, isn't it? It's between the calculating logical part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, and that immediate craving limbic system.
And what's fascinating here is that high intelligence can actually be a vulnerability.
How so?
Well, high earners often suffer from a form of, let's call it, genius immunity complex. They believe their superior ability to earn means they don't have to follow the basic rules of frugality or delay.
I'll just make more money later.
Exactly. They feel entitled to immediate consumption because they can theoretically always earn the money back. But that belief just completely bypasses the core behavioral requirement. The knowledge barrier is low. The behavioral barrier is incredibly high because it demands a lifelong commitment to denying your immediate natural urges.
And those urges, especially among these high-earning professionals, they often lead directly into the cycle our sources call the rat race.
Let's define this explicitly because it's more than just working hard. It's a specific behavioral pathology. The rat race is defined here as dedicating excessive time and effort. We're talking 60 hours a week or more. Not for genuine fulfillment or impact.
But just to buy things.
Fundamentally just to buy things. It is effort dedicated to consumption And critically, consumption that's often driven by external expectations.
And the analysis of the motivation behind this rat race, it just illuminates the entire absurdity of it. Why do people commit their entire, finite lifespan to this treadmill of expenditure?
Right.
The source suggests it's powerfully driven by status signaling, the attempt to keep up appearances, communicate success to their peer group.
The old keeping up with the Joneses.
It's exactly that. They are trading their most valuable resource, their time, for visible assets that broadcast their success now.
And status signaling is so deeply wired in us. It's a mechanism to demonstrate competence and, ensure survival within a social hierarchy.
Sure, that makes evolutionary sense.
It does.
Mhm.
And in modern Western society, money is the most recognizable, tangible proxy for status. So people make these enormous sacrifices, missing family time, sacrificing their health, taking on these highly stressful jobs just to acquire the visible markers.
Of the perfect house in the perfect neighborhood.
The perfectly located house, the annual luxury car lease, the high-end watch. This behavioral need for validation, it drives consumption, even when it's financially ruinous.
The inherent contradiction highlighted by the sources is almost darkly comedic, like you said.
It really is.
People are pushing themselves to the breaking point to buy things, often to impress people they either actively don't like or, whose opinions they realistically shouldn't need to acknowledge for their own happiness.
The effort is completely misaligned with internal fulfillment.
Completely.
It's the tragedy of what they call hedonic adaptation.
Yeah.
You work 60 hours a week to earn enough for that expensive kitchen remodel to impress your friends. The moment the remodel is finished, you get a temporary hit of validation and pleasure.
For a minute, yeah.
But within 3 months, the kitchen is just raiding. The kitchen. You adapt to the new status quo and the dopamine fades. So what do?
You need the next thing.
You need the next expenditure, the next status signal, maybe it's the boat, to get that hit again.
Yeah.
That misalignment, working hard for a transient external pleasure, is the perpetual engine of the rat race. It requires constant fueling through new purchases because the previous ones just stopped delivering satisfaction.
So we're perpetually buying temporary admiration instead of securing permanent independence.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And that realization just sets the stage perfectly for Section 2, which I think is the core insight that changes everything for the learner. Rich versus wealthy.
Absolutely. This distinction is the single most important conceptual leap away from that rat race mindset. Behaviorally and structurally, being rich and being wealthy are not points on the same spectrum.
They're opposites.
They're philosophical opposites.
Let's define rich first, then. The source defines richness primarily by its visibility.
Visibility, yeah.
Richness relates directly to your current income flow and spending power. It is the flashy car you see. It is that constant stream of consumption, the immediate ability to spend large amounts.
Richness is a performance. It's a loud declaration of high income. It's instantaneous. If you have a massive paycheck, you are rich because you can afford the lifestyle creep, the private school tuition, the high-end leases, the expensive restaurants. Crucially, richness is designed to be an external measure.
So it's the primary tool of status signaling.
Exactly.
And the implication here is profound. Richness is often extremely fragile because it relies entirely on a current high income flow to maintain that visible lifestyle. The minute the income stops, the job loss, the market downturn, an unexpected illness, the performance just collapses.
The house of cards falls.
Yeah, the high fixed costs of that rich lifestyle, they become these huge liabilities that quickly consume any remaining assets.
Which is precisely why the concept the source champions, being wealthy, is so powerful.
Yeah.
Wealth is fundamentally invisible.
Invisible.
It relates not to income flow, but to accumulated assets, savings, investments. It is precisely the money you don't see.
And the definition of wealthy here just transcends the balance sheet. Wealth is a state of being. It's a complete absence of financial obligation and an abundance of choice. It's the freedom to wake up and say, I can do whatever I want today.
That optionality.
That optionality, that time asset, that is the essence of financial freedom.
Wealth is a reservoir of stored time. The truly wealthy person might still have a high net worth, but their visible consumption is often, modest.
Why is that?
Because they prioritize the invisible asset, the invested capital that gives them resilience and choice and freedom over the visible liability. They drive the older, reliable car because that money is still actively working for them, compounding silently in the background.
Okay, let's use a concrete scenario to bring this to life, to address that need for strong examples. Let's compare two high-achieving professionals, both making, say, $350,000 a year.
Okay. So, meet Dr. Rich, a consultant who has maximized every visible marker of success. They live in a sprawling home with a, I don't know, $10,000 a month mortgage.
Right.
They lease a brand new high-end SUV and a sports coupe, and they take 2 massive international vacations every year. Their income flow is huge, but their monthly fixed costs consume, say, 85% of their paycheck.
Wow.
So if that consulting contract ends, Dr. Rich has maybe 3 months before real panic sets in. That is the definition of high-income fragility.
Now let's meet Mrs. Wealthy. She's an equally high-earning software architect.
Oh.
She lives in a comfortable but not sprawling home with a paid-off mortgage. She drives a reliable 5-year-old vehicle, and she directs 40% of her income into low-cost index funds.
Right there. She's choosing invisible wealth over visible consumption.
Exactly. She might be considered rich by her income, but she is definitively wealthy by her asset accumulation and her optionality.
And the key psychological takeaway here is that Mrs. Wealthy is invisible. Her freedom is not on display. You cannot differentiate her from someone making half her salary, not based on external markers.
Whereas Dr. Rich is just constantly performing.
Constantly. The visibility trap is so insidious because the rat race pushes us to appear rich, often at the cost of sacrificing the underlying asset accumulation required to actually become wealthy.
So the moment you decide to make a dollar visible by buying that, that Veblen good, that luxury item designed specifically to signal your status, you have actively decreased your invisible wealth.
And you've sacrificed a piece of your future time.
The choice is always between looking successful now or being successful later.
This is such a critical realization, especially for our target audience of, highly intelligent people. They often fall for this trap because they are expected by their professional peers to maintain a certain lifestyle.
Yeah, the social pressure.
The lawyer is expected to live in a specific neighborhood. The executive is expected to drive a specific car. The behavioral flaw isn't a lack of math. It's a failure to prioritize internal freedom over external validation.
Mm-hmm.
They crave that immediate, potent dopamine hit of being seen as successful now.
And they sacrifice the structural integrity of their future to get it.
Precise.
That craving, that need for the immediate psychological reward is exactly what we need to dissect in Section 3, the time preference battle, instant versus delayed gratification.
Yes.
This is the single most important axis of behavioral control in personal finance.
It is the moment the abstract concept becomes tangible. We were all biologically wired for immediate reward. Our primitive brain is structured to prioritize immediate survival and immediate pleasure. That's why instant gratification is just such a powerful force.
And the source analyzes this as the immediate psychological reward system. Instant gratification is the dopamine hit of buying something new right now. It's visceral.
Totally.
You see it, you touch it, you own it, and your brain just releases that satisfying neurochemical reward. It's tangible input. Immediate pleasure.
And this rapid feedback loop is what sustains the rat race. The painful effort of working 60 hours a week is immediately justified by the ability to purchase the symbol of that sacrifice.
Stress equals expenditure.
Stress equals expenditure equals a dopamine spike.
Mm-hmm.
The loop is fast, it's efficient, and it's highly addictive. This is why we see the phenomenon of retail therapy. It's a self-medicating behavioral loop to relieve the stress generated by the work required to afford the therapy itself.
That is a vicious cycle. Let's revisit the choice then. The difference between buying the new $80,000 car now, that immediate thrill, the status bump, the smell of new leather,
Right.
versus taking that same $80,000 and investing it into an index fund.
The investment path, which is the path of delayed gratification, is profoundly boring to the immediate reward center of the brain.
So boring.
The money just vanishes from your bank account. There's no physical object, no status boost, and certainly no immediate dopamine spike. There's only the abstract promise of a bigger reward later.
Right.
And that waiting period, that void between the action of saving and the reward of future financial freedom, that is the exact psychological hurdle that high-income earners so frequently fail to clear.
This psychological failure is often analyzed in behavioral economics as Preston bias or hyperbolic discounting.
Right, hyperbolic discounting.
We systematically overweight the value of a reward right now compared to a mathematically identical or even a much larger reward later. We know intellectually that the invested $80,000 will be worth significantly more in 20 years.
But emotionally, that future money feels so abstract and irrelevant compared to the immediate tangible pleasure of the new car key in our hand.
Exactly.
So championing delayed gratification is therefore an act of sustained behavioral counter-programming. You have to consciously train your brain to value the abstract future freedom over the immediate tangible pleasure. You are making the unexciting invisible choice consistently.
And since we established that true wealth is hidden, it relies entirely on money not spent.
Right.
So delayed gratification is the mechanism that ensures that money is successfully redirected from the visible consumption column into the invisible asset column.
This elevates delayed gratification to the level of a behavioral antidote against the entire mechanism of status signaling. You are consciously sacrificing present admiration, the appearance of being rich right now, for future independence, the certainty of being wealthy later.
That requires a profound psychological maturity.
It does. You have to internalize that your future self is a person worthy of security and freedom, and that future self's needs outweigh your present self's need for approval.
So the person who masters delayed gratification understands that the utility of, say, $10,000 invested today is exponentially higher than the utility of $10,000 spent today.
They're not just saving money.
No, they're purchasing options and optionality that compound over time. The emotional reward shifts from the transient pleasure of a purchase to the deep structural security of knowing you are resilient against future uncertainty.
And this mastery allows you to view consumption not as a reward, but as a sacrifice.
That's a huge shift.
Every purchase is not just an exchange of money for goods, but an exchange of future freedom for temporary pleasure. When you frame it that way, the decision to delay becomes much clearer, even though it remains psychologically very difficult.
So if delayed gratification is the choice to reject the immediate reward, what's the consistent action? What's the daily habit that supports that choice? That brings us right to section 4, frugality as a philosophy of freedom.
And when people hear frugality, they immediately think of deprivation, ramen noodles, counting pennies.
Being cheap.
Being cheap. But our sources entirely redefine this concept. They present frugality not as a lack, but as a sophisticated, deliberate, and powerful strategy for maximizing efficiency and accelerating freedom.
Right. It's not about being cheap. It's about being ruthlessly intentional with your resources. The definition here is so powerful. Frugality is simply being efficient.
It implies thoughtful resource allocation and intelligent purchasing, rather than some kind of involuntary sacrifice.
And this efficiency flows directly from a fundamental value shift. Frugality involves consciously valuing your independence more than your possessions.
That's the philosophical bedrock of wealth accumulation. If your primary goal is the invisible freedom that wealth provides, you naturally become extremely discerning about what you allow to consume your resources, because every single dollar spent is a choice against freedom.
This changes the entire purchasing calculus, doesn't it? The truly frugal person isn't simply avoiding a high-quality product. They are avoiding any product, regardless of quality, that fails to provide sufficient long-term value relative to the cost of their freedom.
They're calculating the cost not in dollars on the receipt, but in time.
How many hours did I have to work for this?
Exactly. How many hours did I have to work to earn this money, and what is the cost of the compounded return I sacrificed by spending it?
We can operationalize this buying time concept. If your hourly wage is, say, $100 after tax, and you are considering a $1,000 non-essential item, you're buying that item for 10 hours of your life.
But if you invest that $1,000 and it doubles every 10 years, that investment today is buying you potential retirement time. The ultimate goal of frugality is to buy time, not just save money, and that leads directly to financial freedom.
And this allows us to make that crucial clarification between frugality and deprivation. Deprivation is an externally imposed constraint. You cannot afford the thing, regardless of your values.
Right.
Frugality is an internal, deliberate choice. You choose not to afford the thing because you have internally calculated that the opportunity cost that sacrifice future freedom is just too high.
It's a massive mindset shift regarding consumption habits. Frugality is a choice to prioritize long-term asset accumulation over short-term consumption. The frugal individual is asking, does this possession offer more value, more genuine, long-lasting utility than the compounded freedom I would gain by investing this money instead?
And if the answer is no,
the purchase is rejected. Not out of stinginess, but out of supreme confidence in their long-term goal.
This is why the high earner who struggles often thinks they're being frugal, but they're often just engaging in high-end consumption.
Yeah, they might save on coffee, but they'll spend $50,000 a year on car leases or luxury travel.
Right. True frugality is a holistic philosophy that rejects the necessity of status signaling through visible means. It's the active rebellion against consumer culture.
And once you have adopted this behavioral framework, the discipline of delayed gratification and the efficiency of frugality, you've successfully generated the fuel.
Okay.
Now we need the engine to turn that fuel into the exponential result we call wealth. And that mechanism is the focus of our final section, the engine of wealth, the power of compounding.
We transition from the psychological necessity to the practical mathematical certainty. Compounding is where that patient behavior finally receives its massive reward.
Compounding is often called the eighth wonder of the world. And we have to understand it not just as earning interest, but behaviorally as letting compound interest do the work.
Letting it do the work.
Yeah. The power of compounding is directly proportional to two factors: the time you allow it to run and the consistency with which you feed it.
And the source rightly characterizes compounding as being built on small, consistent habits compounding over years. It's the aggregation of marginal gains applied to capital.
Which just reinforces the core thesis again. Success isn't about finding one massive speculative home run. It's about the relentless consistency of behavior.
And this consistency is exactly why it is so behaviorally challenging. The source notes, it's boring, but it works.
It's so boring. Compounding is inherently unexciting. It lacks the instant gratification hit of a winning trade or a visible purchase. It rewards discipline and extreme patience, qualities that are systematically devalued in our modern, fast-paced, dopamine-driven information economy.
Well, when you diligently invest, say, $1,000 this month, the compound returns in the first 2 years might net you, what, $50 or $100?
That's nothing.
It's negligible emotional feedback. It feels like a total non-event. The human brain really struggles to internalize exponential growth. We
Yeah.
see the linear progression of the first few years, which feels totally flat, and our desire for immediate reward tells us to just quit and spend the money on something fun instead.
The secret, the reason it works, is that the compounding curve is exponential. It is mathematically designed to be almost unnoticeable for a long period, which is the necessary trial by fire for patience. If you look at those famous charts, the curve is almost flat for the first decade.
Right.
But the person who embraces delayed gratification, they understand they must endure that boring, flat, horizontal section because that is where the foundation is laid. The exciting vertical climb only happens in the later years, after the early consistent inputs have had enough time to multiply themselves.
And this is where the synthesis of the entire deep dive happens. The mechanism, compounding, only functions when the behavioral requirements are met.
First, compounding absolutely requires delayed gratification. You have to be willing to sacrifice the immediate reward of current consumption, all that visible spending, for the eventual, much larger, future reward of financial freedom.
If you spend the money now, the engine sits idle.
Starved of fuel, exactly.
Yeah.
Second, compounding requires frugality. You need the consistent saving and investing of unspent income to feed the mechanism reliably and maximize the input.
So frugality ensures the flow of capital into that invisible asset pool is sustained month after month, year after year.
If you're inefficient with your spending, there's just nothing left to compound.
This completes the cycle beautifully.
It does. Good behavior, the choice of frugality and the application of delay feeds the mechanism, compounding, to achieve the ultimate goal: wealth, which we've defined as resilient freedom and time. The successful accumulation of wealth is a long-term triumph of behavioral science over immediate biological impulse.
The implication is so clear. When you look at someone who has achieved true financial freedom, not just a high salary, you are not looking at a math genius or some lucky speculator.
No. You're looking at a master of applied psychology who has consistently delayed rewards, maintained remarkable consistency, and prioritized invisible optionality over visible status for a very, very long time.
It's the ultimate personal journey of self-mastery, recognizing that your greatest asset is your own discipline, and your greatest enemy is your own inherent desire for immediate gratification.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the psychology of personal finance. Let's just briefly reiterate the core messages we've established for the listener.
The central, liberating message is that financial success is an applied skill in psychology and impulse control. It's not some sophisticated math problem reserved for the intellectual elite.
Your IQ doesn't protect you from poor behavioral habits.
Not at all.
We clarify the distinction between rich, which is visible income, performance, fragility versus wealthy, which is invisible assets, resilience, and freedom.
Richness is what you show. Wealth is what you keep. And the crucial behavioral move is the conscious defeat of instant gratification by embracing frugality, redefining it as ruthless efficiency and intentionality, where you value your independence and your time above your visible possessions.
And the key to building that invisible wealth is the consistent application of that behavioral discipline, which fuels the often boring but mathematically powerful engine of compounding, leading toward those exponential returns.
Now, we'll leave you with a final reflective thought, building on this idea that wealth is inherently invisible.
If true wealth is defined by the money you don't spend and the choices you do have, how does that realization fundamentally change the way you judge the spending habits of everyone around you? And I think more importantly, your own consumption choices.
Think about the markers of status in your own life, whether it's the neighborhood, the car, or that constant need for the latest technological upgrade. Consider what hidden freedoms you are sacrificing year after year for that immediate visible status signal.
What if the most successful, most resilient people you know are the ones who deliberately choose not to perform their success at all?
That shifts the entire conversation from chasing income targets to prioritizing behavioral control and quiet, dignified optionality.
Ponder the profound invisibility, the resilience, and the silence of true wealth. And then think about what specific, boring, consistent habit you can implement today to prioritize that invisible long-term freedom over the transient, visible display of success.
That's the real deep dive. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.